You were a pioneer as probably the first black woman on British television.
I was. I was really the first black, not the first Jamaican. There was another Jamaican man a couple of years before me on the BBC. But because he was very light-skinned, no one said, get that black face off our TV screens. And they used a different word, I'll be polite. So I was really the first black face in a current affairs news capacity. And no one was accustomed to that. Before we'd been, singing and dancing, but never being serious and delivering the news, interviewing people, or talking about serious things. I mean, I remember standing outside the Russian embassy when Czechoslovakia was invaded and talking about it, and following right after the ITN news, literally following right after, because our program began 5 minutes after the 6 o'clock news. So it was unusual for Britain. It hadn't happened before. From the bosses, they were quite happy with my work. The viewers, I didn't get the responses from the viewers. I would come and do my job and go home. But it turns out that they had responses from the viewers who didn't like seeing me there. In retrospect, now that I'm home in Jamaica, I keep meeting people who tell me they used to watch me on television in those days. Their mothers would call them in, or even older people who actually, would come home just to see me on television. And they're so proud, they're so glad. It's nice to get all of that. But they never called the stations at the time to say how nice it was to see a black person on their TV screen. But other people did, and they said they didn't like it. It's interesting because it was the same year, the year I got my job was the same year that the Race Relations Act was passed in Parliament. I even went to Parliament one day to see what it was like and what they were talking about. But the station didn't say, when people called, wrote in saying, get that N-word off our screens. They didn't say, no, the law says we shouldn't. So we leave her there. She's doing a good job. They didn't say that. They said to the racists, okay, we hear you. We will do what you say. And, I look now, I'm very disappointed at their actions. But at the time, I just had to accept it. I had to accept it. There was no organization for me to complain to and say, will you champion my cause? Birmingham was the most racist place I experienced in Britain.
Their way of living is not like the white people.
If there were less of them, perhaps, and more of us, then they would learn to live as we do.
We shall definitely be outnumbered in this road.
I couldn't get a hotel room to rent. I had to go back to London every night after the program and then come up by train every morning because no hotel would rent me a room. I eventually got a room at the YWCA after I'd been there quite a few weeks. I had a 6-month contract. And I remember one night going out, being sent out to do a story on a very cold night, coming back to the studio and finding it all closed down. And saying, hey, what happened? They said, oh, we had a live interview with Enoch Powell, but he only agreed to come to the station if that black girl wasn't there. So I was like, wow, I mean, that really stunned me.
I want to cut forward many decades now to the present day and the debate about the monarchy, the British royal family.
It's a major disappointment to discover that the person or the people that you were taught was the mother country, the people who we should love, didn't really have the same feeling in return. What happened, for example, to Meghan Markle looked from our side of the fence really disappointing. That's the word I would use. We were really disappointed to learn that the idea of having a member of their family of the same racial mixture as ourselves was not a nice thing. So if they didn't like to have one of us in their family, what about all of us who've been living, growing up to the belief that we were part of them? I mean, that's really what has made so many Jamaicans want to abolish the monarchy, to change from being to having a monarchical head of state to having our own head of state, a Jamaican national. It really showed us a lot. Of course, it was a great indication to us that we're not part of that family. The family that we thought sheltered us, that we fought for, that we helped rebuild their country, doesn't love us.
It sounds like for Meghan Markle, this was a big moment in the way that people perceive the royal family and the UK as well.
It was sad that after all that happened to them, she felt it necessary to speak out about the reasons why they'd left. So many things were being said by the media. So many very negative things were being said. I can't blame her and him for going public to give their side of the story. And it wasn't a pretty sight. And they chose their words carefully. But it shocked us to know. To find that there was a rejection of him and her really made us, you know, look into it with faces like this. You know? And we still haven't quite recovered. We're very proud of what they've done. We admire their charitable work. And we love them. We love them. We love the whole royal family. But we don't love some of the things that have been done. We can't love those things and love ourselves at the same time.
Will you be watching on Saturday?
Oh yes, I was around for the first coronation. I watch television, and this is a television spectacle. I'll be watching, but I'll be hoping that we hurry up and make Jamaica a republic and get us out from under having the monarchy as head of our nation, where we have to bow to such a person and sing songs of praise to such a person. You would think the relationship would have improved, but that confession about the color of Archie's skin, what might it be? That was a big blow. That was a punch in the solar plexus. That really stunned us and stunned all the people in the Commonwealth who have the racial colors you and I have. You know, it stunned us. It still does. We will never forget. We can never forget.
When you look back at your time in the UK as a face of ITV, how would you describe that time for you personally, but also for viewers and for the history of television, for the history of this channel? How would you describe that period?
It was good for Britain, for Barbara Blake to happen, to put her black face on British television. I went back 10 years after, and no one had replaced me. There was not another black face. Well, Trevor McDonald by then had come 7 years after me, and then Maura Stewart came along. Barbara Blake was good. It was good that it happened, because now she, that woman, it has become a symbol of what Britain should be, of what the media should be. And I'm glad that I was used to do that work. I'm glad that Jaja chose me to be that person in that place. And she did her work, and she did it well. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity. And I'm glad that the racism I experienced there forced me back home, because that's been the greatest thing. I've spent the last 50 years at home in Jamaica and done so many things that I've really enjoyed doing, and that Jamaica has loved enough to give me the Order of Distinction. So I'm glad, and I've made my contribution here at home. I've helped build my little Jamaica and make it better in my little teeny small way. Small enough but big enough that a television crew comes from England to interview this Jamaican girl and put her on British television and say she's an example of something good that Jamaicans did in Britain. I'm very proud to have been that person.